You know what it is? I'm actually very upset that it says multi-streaming with Restream.io. But wait, did he stop the broadcast? Did you stop the broadcast to fix it now?
I tried to fix the thing. Let me.
Oh
Just
my gosh.
it's gonna have to be.
He just dropped off
multi-streaming.
all our viewers. Ay, bendito. Bendito sea.
Northern Kingdom.
This is your silly dub moment, bro.
Wow,
You are
wow.
living your silly dub
See,
moment.
now
right
now I have to like kill some time because all those YouTube people, they're gonna miss out on some good stuff if I go in on this
We
stuff.
can do the introductions again.
Is there a call? Do we have any calls?
There it is. He's back up now.
Power Hour Plus. Eugenics.
Oh, no calls.
No calls right now. Okay, all right. So this is what we deal with. Yeah, the YouTube is off. He's gonna fix it now. I think he fixed it now. Did you fix it?
Yeah, they just gonna have to go to Ave Phoenix again.
Yeah, you'll have to just go back in to get on the YouTube because Brilliance over here did that. Wait, so go to IUIC Phoenix again. There we go. I see it there. No, I don't want to add to the queue. I want to look at it. Close player. Hit it. Okay. All right. Now we got a topic there. Hey, listen. I apologize. All right. It was not your host here that did that. It was the producer in the booth. You know what? I think I want to queue up a picture of him like when he first got here. And every time he does something silly, we got to like put the picture up.
Don't do Vegeta like that.
I was like, don't do him like that.
Yeah, we got to do him like that.
Okay.
Got to provoke him to good works. Damn, he said, what sound is that, an ostrich? I don't know what sound he put that.
I think that was dope.
All right, okay, we here. So I'm gonna jump right in because we're gonna use the book War Against All Puerto Ricans, and I want us to talk about a few things here. So let me see if I want to start at. I don't think I want to start at page 7. I know I had sent you that. Page 7. Page 7 talks about, no, that's the cancer stuff when they gave us cancer. We're going to talk about that too. They gave us cancer. Experimented on us with cancer experiments. All right? Okay.
You don't remember the scripture yet?
Oh, no. No, he totally took me out the spirit.
It wasn't Daniel 9. Was
Nope,
it?
wasn't that.
Right.
It wasn't that. I wanted to go
It
somewhere
was Genesis
else.
1 and 1.
All right.
Nope.
Between Genesis 1 and 1 and Revelation.
No. He totally took me out the spirit. I could not remember the scripture that popped into my head.
Thanks a lot, producer.
He totally.
Bruh.
Oh, man. I'll say, did you flash the book?
Yeah, he did.
Damn, we only got 20 people back on YouTube now. You destroyed us. We had like 60 people watching. All right. So we're going to go to the page that says Chapter 5, A Good Career Move. Right? We're going to jump right in. We're going to dive right in and show you more of the atrocities that they did. And the reason I like to focus on this is because it's very recent that it happened, right? It's very recent. And it's important for that because they'll try to tell you that it was long ago, you should forget it, don't harp on it. I want us to be able to see the nature of this beast and what he's done.
And even if it was long ago, who cares? It still happened. It's still relevant because it still fits the curses that happened to a people that are of the Bible.
Right. Okay, so we got it up? Yes. Okay, so this is Chapter 5 in the book War Against All Puerto Ricans. It says a good career move. All right, so Barceloneta is unique among the many Puerto Rican municipalities. It is the home of a Pfizer factory that produces all of the Viagra sold in North America. So all the Viagra that's sold in North America is produced in Puerto Rico.
You started off with a bang right there.
That has a lot to do with the Jones Act. That has a lot to do with the benefits that corporations get there. Remember last week we spoke about how they built their back on the economy, the rape of the economy of Puerto Rico, right? Known as Ciudad Viagra City, the town reflects a larger relationship between the island and Big Pharma. As of 2008, Puerto Rico was the world's largest shipper of pharmaceuticals, accounting for nearly 25% of total shipments. Not just Viagra. It's talking about all these drugs that Big Pharma pushes out. They're produced in Puerto Rico. So, again, seeing the effects from 1898 when they came in there all the way up to today, right? It says 16 of the 20 biggest selling drugs in the United States. That means those opioids and all that stuff that they're saying is an epidemic. All that stuff is produced by these pharmaceutical companies in Puerto Rico. 16 of the 20 biggest selling drugs in the United States are produced in Puerto Rico, and the profits are enormous. That has never changed. Remember last week we were talking about Domino Sugar, and they were saying the yield of productivity there was more than anywhere else. That has not changed. They still benefit from the atrocities that they did to our people from back then. It says North American sales of Viagra exceed $1 billion per year, with profit margins of roughly 90% per pill. 90% profit margins. That means they pay, just to keep it simple, they pay 10 cents to produce it, and they sell it for $1. That's 90 cents profit, right? The whole time. Right, that might be too simple. They pay $10 to produce it and sell it for $100.
Yeah, there you go.
Each.
And you get to keep 90. 70 years ago, the town had a different industry. Every year, more than 1,000 women walked into the Hospital Municipal de Barceloneta carrying a little suitcase containing a bathrobe, underclothes, slippers, a rosary, and sometimes a Bible. Each woman would talk to a doctor, fill out a few forms, and be assigned to a bed. 2 days later, she'd walk out with her tiny newborn, the joy of her life. So it's letting you know this is the hospital that they would go to in this little town to give birth. She didn't know, however, that her tubes had been cut and that she would never have another baby. For decades, the doctors in Barceloneta sterilized Puerto Rican women without their knowledge or consent. Jeez. We recently did a Saturday episode, and when I say recently, I want to say probably late last year, showing how they were doing Issachar that way recently. They were saying in these ICE detention centers, and that they were doing these forced sterilizations on them. I tell you, whenever I read that, it gets me like so aggravated because the levels of them trying to discontinue us from our heritage is not just with the identity piece. They did physical harm to try to destroy us, to try to prevent us and it was on many fronts, because basically what we're going to cover today is two aspects of it. We're going to cover the sterilizations, and we're going to cover the experimental drugs that they would use on us and how they would inject us with things and dose us with radiation to the point that we would develop cancer within months to a year's time. Because of the amount of exposure that they would put into our people, right? And I'm telling you, a lot of, again, I've said it before, a lot of you are not familiar with Puerto Ricans.
Oh, you gonna know today.
But Puerto Ricans are bugged the hell out.
He said you're gonna.
And there's a reason why we bugged the hell out, because a number was done to us. Mm-hmm. A horrible thing was done to us, right? So it goes on to say, even if told about la operación, the operation, the women were not informed that it was irreversible and permanent. So even if they did let them know that they were doing that, they were never informed that they would never be able to have any other kids again. Over 20,000 women were sterilized in this one town. That's not the whole island of Puerto Rico. They're saying in this one town, and we're going to read more facts to let you know that it was much more. This scenario was repeated throughout Puerto Rico until at its high point, 1/3 of the women on the island had been sterilized. 1/3, 33% of the population forced sterilization. And Puerto Rico had the highest incident of female sterilization in the world. In the world. That's that one in Daniel where it says nothing has happened. So read that real quick. Because I'm telling you, that scripture has so many applications when you think of every atrocity that they've done unto us. It said at this time, at its height, Puerto Rico had the highest incidence of female sterilization in the world. So yeah, were they sterilizing some other races here and there, right? Some of their own people here and there. That's collateral damage for their agenda. Their real target, their primary objective, has always been and will always be the Israelites. Read that.
The book of Daniel, chapter 9 and verse 11. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore, the curse is poured upon us.
That's the curse. That's the curse of the law. All those curses that you read in Deuteronomy 28. It says, we have not obeyed the law, therefore the curse is poured upon us. Come on.
And the oath that is written in the law of Moses,
The
servant of
oath
God.
that was written there is when you read in Deuteronomy 27, I think it's the 26th verse.
Right.
And it says, and cursed we will be if we don't do all these things in the law.
Mm-hmm.
And we all said amen. We all agreed to that. We said, so be it. That's the oath we made to the Most High.
It goes back further than that. When you read in 2nd Ezra, it tells you that before the world began, no one spake against me.
Right.
Right?
We all signed the contract, and we used the Most High's Son, Jesus the Christ's blood,
Right.
to sign that thing.
Right. Go ahead. Read that from the top again.
Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice.
You know what's interesting? He says we transgress the law by departing from it. That means stopping keeping it. It's so plain when you read these scriptures to understand that. The keeping of the law is what destroyed our, the lack of keeping of the law is what destroyed our people. So guess what's going to get us back? The keeping of it.
I mean, that's common sense, right?
You would think so.
But then again, not all sense is common. to
No,
everybody,
common
right?
sense is not that common. Go ahead, read on.
That they might not obey thy voice. Therefore, the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. And he hath confirmed his words, which he spake against us and against our judges.
You know how he confirmed them? By looking at the conditions that we're in today. What we're reading right here and all these historical accounts that you see is confirmation that those words are true. What we read in Deuteronomy 28, 45, 46.
Right.
What we quoted in Deuteronomy 27 and 26. Go ahead, read.
And against our judges that judge us, by bringing upon us a great evil. For under the whole heaven hath not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem.
Under the whole heaven have not been done as have been done upon Jerusalem. And I got to be careful because the way social media is working right now, I want to say some stuff. I want to make some comments about
Talk
the
your ish.
Holocaust. I'm trying to
Talk your ish.
You will once you start getting into
I'm trying to say it the right way, but that they don't just shut the whole thing down.
Yeah, they gonna censor us.
If you compare length of affliction, if you compare level and intensity of the evil that was done to us, it does not compare to what they show you happened to Amalek.
Thus saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord.
I'll say it like that.
It says under the whole heaven.
And I got to tell you, brothers and sisters, the only reason, listen, if I was in camp, whatever, I'm going to bring it out.
What's going on?
Right? But they'll shut the show down. They'll shut the show down.
It's not gonna go out void.
They do it straight. If you have an ear, you know what I just said.
There it is.
You have an ear, you know what I just said. You know what I just said. Under the whole heaven, it haven't happened to us. So just like we read here in the book, it says Puerto Rico had the highest incidence of female sterilization in the world. In the world. So it says this campaign of sterilization stemmed from a growing concern in the United States about inferior races and the declining purity of Anglo-Saxon bloodlines. So we were considered in their eyes the inferior race and the purity of their bloodline. You best believe they're concerned about that now as well, because they're showing reports that by 2050 they won't be the dominant race. That's why they're up in arms the way they are. That's why you had this riot on the Capitol, right? That's not the reason on the surface that they're telling you. But I think we had done an episode a few weeks back where he showed a guy and he was like, why are you angry? Well, there's a lot of things that have been done. And he wouldn't say it because he knows what the real reason is why he's angry. And he's angry because they feel that we are an inferior race and that the purity of their bloodline is declining. They see that they are in their spirit, though they will not acknowledge it because of their pomp and pride. Their spirit knows that they are in their decline. They are in their age of decadence.
That's right. That's Psalm 64 and 6. They're inward. They already know what's going to happen. Bring it out.
Bring it out, little man.
All right, I'll praise it.
I'll read it for you. Psalm 64, verse 6. The book of Psalms, chapter 64 and verse 6. They search out iniquities.
So what we going over today, it's already showing that they searching out iniquities. Go ahead.
They accomplish a diligent search.
Meaning they're going to be successful. They're successful in their search in destroying our people and putting us in bondage and captivity. Read.
Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep.
Boom, there it is. Their whole mission is they've already looked ahead. They've already looked ahead 10, 20, 30 centuries.
And he ended it with a boom.
Hey, you're gonna see the heart is deep when we start bringing out this history of eugenics. And I know Bishop's done amazing classes on it multiple times. I think I got a couple of tidbits here to show you how it's relevant to Northern Kingdom specifically, some of the aspects of this eugenics that we went through. So it says, throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Claude Fuisse, a history teacher and headmaster of the prestigious Phillips Andover Academy, argued our declining birth rate. When he says our, right, we're the only ones that you read Matthew 121 and we think it means all nations, right? Read that real quick, what Matthew 121 says, because some people don't know what I'm talking about. Let's read Matthew 121.
The book of Matthew, chapter 1 and verse 21. And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins.
Right? We're the only dum-dums in the earth that'll hear, he shall save his people from their sins, and think that means the whole world. Think that means anybody that could say, hey, I'm spiritually an Israelite.
Right.
I spiritually, right. All I got
love you, God.
that if you say that you're his people.
Mm-hmm.
That don't make no damn sense. And this is right after they just went over his lineage to tell you who his people are.
Right.
So this devil right here, Claude Fuisse says, our declining birth rate, meaning Edom, may perhaps indicate a step towards national deterioration. So he said, damn, we ain't having a lot of babies right now. And that's going to deteriorate our lands. That's going to deteriorate our country. He says, among the so-called upper and leisure classes, noticeably among the university group, because at this time, there was no blacks and Hispanics, Native Americans, nowhere on the radar that was upper class or the leisure class. All right? So you know who he's talking about here. We'll talk about the 1920s and 30s.
I was going to say, this is pre-NBA, pre-NFL.
Right.
When our people can make some money doing something.
Right.
This is way before that stuff.
Right. Among the so-called upper and leisure classes, noticeably among the university group, this is all code talk because guess what? We didn't get to go to colleges back then.
Right.
That was the good old boys that were into stuff back then. So he says, notably among the university group, the present birth rate is strikingly low. On the other hand, among the Slavonic and Latin immigrants, it is relatively high. Listen, I'm telling you right now, this is a dog whistle because some people are you might have said, oh, we can argue historically the Slavic people were migrating at that time, all that stuff. Yeah. Maybe they were.
He said, yeah.
Right?
That's a DWT if I've ever heard one.
Right.
It's a dog whistle term.
He says the Slavonic and Latin immigrants, it is relatively high. All right, we'll take the call in a second. We seem thus to be letting the best blood thin out and disappear. Calling themselves the best blood.
Wow.
At its annual convention. And you know what? Get me the one where he says they're in the Apocrypha, where he talks about that they're nothing. They've always been less than nothing.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about the best blood here. Was that 2 Ezra 6?
Yes, sir.
Get me that real quick.
Get
See what the Bible has to say about this.
See what the Bible says.
Caller, stand by. Caller, stand by.
Stand by, caller.
We heating up. We just started to get a rolling boil. So just hang tight. Just hang tight. All right.
The book of 2 Ezra, chapter 6 and verse 55. All this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sake.
He's talking about the Israelites' sake. The world was made. Let me tell you something. You black, Hispanic, Native American brother, sister, who we've been downtrodden. And I know a lot of us say in our minds, no, I know I'm special. I know I'm this. You don't know. I don't think we realize how special we are.
Right.
I don't think we realize how special we are. The world was made for our sakes. When God created that beautiful creation that you read in Genesis 1, he did it thinking about us. You know how like when you're in love and you go out to buy flowers and get the nice outfit to go on the date, right? You write a poem, you get the music ready for the love, right? You do all those things with the object of your desire in your mind.
Right.
When the Most High said, let there be light, he was thinking about Israel.
That's right.
When the Most High put the two great lights in the sky,
Bring it out.
the lesser to rule the night, the greater to rule the day, he was thinking, this is for you, my beloved. When he multiplied the waters and the firmament and the land and filled it with many things, many life forms, he said, here you go. This is for you, my beloved.
My people.
That's who we are. And none else. And we're going to bring that out here. Go ahead.
Verse 56. As for the other people, which also come of Adam.
He says, now, there are other people that also come of Adam, letting you know two things. There were other people in the garden.
Bring it out.
And that there was a difference. God divided the people from creation. From creation, he drew a line. And people try to say, we all one race. That's y'all who bring those divisions about. That's us as people who bring those divisions about. No, Edom amplifies them, but Most High drew those lines.
Right.
Come on.
As for the other people, which also come of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing.
He said they are nothing. He says here, they are superior bloodline. The Bible says what?
That they are nothing.
He says they are nothing. They are nothing. Come on.
But be like unto spittle.
So now, not only are they nothing, he said they be out like unto spittle. You know what spittle is? That's what's popping out my mouth now as I'm breaking down the scriptures. And it's going to disappear onto the table somewhere or evaporate.
That's right.
That's when you fasted and you got the little thing here and it go like this and you go, ugh.
Yep.
And you throw it off to the side. All right? That's what the Most High said. Come on.
And has likened the abundance of them.
Wait. He says, I liken the abundance of them, meaning the totality of them, the entirety of them.
Yes.
There's no difference. There's no distinction of the Christian ones, this one, that one. They are all no good. There are no good ones. There's no good, oh, I got this one in my coworker and he's all right. In the sight of the Most High God, he has likened the abundance of them to what?
Unto a drop.
Unto a drop. Come on.
That falleth from a vessel.
That falleth from a vessel. You see that drop of water coming down the side of your bottle right there? That thing fall down. Your thirst will still be quenched with what's in your bottle. Nothing.
This is true. Let's prove that.
And hey, I'll take it even further.
Let's prove that.
If you tried to quench your thirst with just that drop that was on the side of the bottle, it would do nothing to do so. You need that to fill it up. So he says they are nothing, they are less than nothing. Thus save the Lord from the beginning. But here you talking about, he said they the superior. He said, we seem thus to be letting the best blood thin out and disappear. Oh, no, Mr. Fuis. Most certainly not. He said, we seem thus to be letting the blood thin out and disappear. All right, I'm going to stop because the next part we're going to start talking about the convention and we're going to go into some of the eugenics with the Slavs. So yes, producer, yes.
Perfect timing.
How come I can't see your face? Go ahead. Who's on the line?
Hey, shalom, brother. How y'all doing tonight?
Shalom. Most High
Can
Christ
you hear
bless
me?
you. Yes, we
Shalom.
hear you loud and clear.
All praise to the Most High Christ. Yes, sir. My name is Josiah Ben Israel, man, calling from Maryland. Hey, listen, I don't want to hold up the lesson. I can hear you on the line. And Cap, I can tell you one thing, man. You can put me on hold as long as you want. And all that fire you spitting out, I'll hold forever.
All praises, brother.
In addition, man, because I keep making it quick, there's no way nobody can tell me that Hispanics and Native Americans are not Israel.
Bring it out, brother.
We too much the same. We got, you know what I mean? We got too many of the same problems, too many of the same issues, man.
Okay.
I mean, all our history fits the same way exactly in the Bible as it is written. You said something a couple of weeks ago on the broadcast. I'm at work, so I can't always call in, but I got a little downtime now. I said, yo, because you're from New York originally, and so am I. You say, hey, in New York, blacks and Hispanics are together, man. Out there where you at in Phoenix, it's not really like that. I'm in Maryland, it's the same way. I try to reach out to my Northern Kingdom brothers and sisters. They still a little standoffish. A couple of brothers speaking a little more, seeking the scriptures, opening up a bit. You know what I mean? The Most High is moving, but, he going to have his way at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I just wanted to bring that out, man. Yo, y'all keep doing what y'all doing. Y'all fire. I'm following in Maryland. I'm trying to, God willing, I'll be in soon. I just got to stop working Saturdays so I can make sure I'm keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High 100%.
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
praise to the Most
All
High,
praise
man.
to the Most High. Thank you
Yo,
for the
love
call.
y'all, man. Got nothing but love and respect for y'all, man. Shalom.
Shalom,
All
Hey,
praise.
shalom.
shalom,
Thank you
brother.
for the
Most High
call.
Christ
Thank you
bless
for
you.
the call. All praise to the Most High, man. Hey, he took the words out my mouth because he said Maryland. I was like, yeah, brother. I said, you know what? All praises for that support. You see it because you grew up in the East Coast. He even said New York. So different vibe, right? So a lot of our people, I notice you come to other parts of the country, that unity is not there. But you know, let anybody tell you from the Northeast, man. I mean, for the most part, Judah and Ephraim, we be rolling together, man. Like, you know, we in the same environments and all that stuff.
That's where the truth had to start in New York.
Yeah, man. That had to be ground zero and stuff like that. Yeah, unbeknownst to a lot of y'all, man.
It had to be.
Judah and Ephraim's tight. But I mean, my best friend, my best friends growing up, for the most part, were not other Puerto Ricans. It was Judah or Benji, and Levi.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why you know, like I usually tell people like Levi and Benji are like some of my favorite tribes because you know it got a lot to do. Listen, and the reason it's not Judah that's up there because even though I had some of my best friends with Judah, is because Levi and Benji food is like has similar elements. So it had to do with the cuisine. It had to do with the cuisine.
Plus that trifling dude, Lamont. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, Lamont.
it.
That
Ruined
Judite
it.
Lamont, man. Ooh, back in the day. That was one of the. I think that was the last fight I had in adolescence. I think I had like a bar fight like later in life. You know, not counting stuff I do with training, but anyway, yeah, Lamont. I remember Lamont. He told me about a story one time. I told him the story of Lamont. He was terrorizing my little brother.
Anyone named Lamont is trifling.
Sound like a
I don't
sound
care,
like a
bro.
Judite.
Sound like a trifling dude.
Oh man. Hey, but all praises. Thank you for the call, my brother. Hey, one thing he did say. I know you say you're trying to get off the job for Saturdays and stuff like that. Good thing you keep yourself watching classes and whatever stuff like that. Do your best, man, to try to get yourself fellowshipping and stuff like that, man, because it's cold out there for an Israelite.
That's right.
It's cold out there for an Israelite alone. All right, we need that support. Albright, I hear you. How many times you gonna make it ring? Good. Shalom, caller. You're on the air.
Shalom, leadership. How are you guys doing tonight?
Shalom, good.
Hey, shalom, sis.
All right, so it's Keisha calling from Toronto, Canada. I'm new in the truth, but I just wanted to touch on the sterilization that you guys were talking about.
Yes.
And the tribe of Gad, over here we call them First Nations or Aboriginals.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say that the same procedures they were doing over here to them, and sometimes they didn't even know that it was happening to them. They couldn't understand what it was that the doctors were forcing them into. And sometimes they would tell them, if you don't do it, we're going to take your child, your newborn, from you.
Jeez,
so it was a big situation that was going on over here. And I think the last reported forced or coerced sterilization was as early as the last time was 2018. So they're still doing it. It's disgusting.
Yep. Hey, you know, my hair stood up just now. Thank you for the call, sister. Because some of the next lines we're going to read in the book talks about a doctor that was the head of the Eugenics Council in Canada. And some of the stuff we're going to bring out in a little bit is going to talk about how Native Americans were a strong target of it as well, right? So you got all the tribes covered in that stuff. So all praises. Thanks for your testimony and bring that to our understanding, calling in from Toronto. That Eugenics Council was a big thing. That's what we're going to start leading into for the next segment of the show here. So thank you for that information, sister. All praises to the Most High.
That's
thank
how
you for
you
your
know
call.
these curses are identified.
And thank you guys. Pray that the Spirit remains with you guys. I love tuning in. All praises, and have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
All
All
Thanks.
praises,
Shalom,
sis.
sis.
Thank you. Have a good night. Shalom.
What are you going to say, officer?
I was saying that's how you know who fits those curses. Because we're the ones being sterilized. We're the ones being raped. We're the ones being depopulated.
Bro, she said 2018.
2018.
That's
right.
insane.
Hey, we just read about something from 2020 that when we did because we did an episode, I can't remember what episode number it was, where we spoke about that, and they were saying in the ICE detention centers, they're taking Issachar and they're sterilizing them. Was it Maryland or was it Virginia? It was somewhere on the East Coast that
It
they
was
were saying.
Virginia.
It was
Yep.
Virginia. And then Virginia has a history of that as well with eugenics and stuff like that. So my hair stood up when she said she's calling from Canada to give that piece of information, because I said, damn, we're about to go into that as the next part in the book right here. So let's continue on. I'm going to come back to the Slavonic thing in a second, right? So he says, on the other hand, among the Slavonic and Latin immigrants, it is relatively high. And I'm telling you, this is a dog whistle, right? I have a little note there. I put SKNK. It says, we seem thus to be letting the best blood thin out and disappear. And then it says, at its annual convention, meaning this was an annual thing, you had a bunch of Edomites meeting together for this stuff. In 1934, the Eugenics Society of Canada, the ESC, advertised the keynote speech by its president, Dr. William Lorne Hutton, as follows: a brief for sterilization of the feeble-minded. You remember that scene in Django when Leonardo DiCaprio saying how the slave brain, the skull, and he cracks the skull and he shows
How
you
it
there's a
has
little
little
divot.
dimples.
Yeah, a little divot or dimple there, and that's what made us docile and things like that. Right? Because even they couldn't believe that they were able to overcome us. Because elements of that dialogue, he was like, the big strong guys, how you got one boss, one boss
on the horse,
over hundreds of slaves, and nobody revolted. Nobody could take that thing down. So he was trying to say it was because of that. In their mind, they saw us as feeble-minded. And you want to know what's funny? There's a scripture. I don't think, does he say feeble? He says lift up the hands and the feeble knees. No, or does it say weak knees?
It's feeble,
right?
Yes.
Get that real quick. It's we were feeble in spirit, not feeble-minded. They're the ones that put us into a mindset of, it's in the New Testament, of not being able to read. So in not being able to read, we lost our history. Right? So I see feeble-minded here, and I'm like, gosh, I said, damn, it's not feeble-minded. We were feeble in spirit, right?
The book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 12. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees.
Right? And the feeble knees, right? Because we were weak in spirit. Lift up the hands and the feeble knees means pray, right? Get yourself right with the Most High, return unto him, and these things will come unto you, the blessings that he had unto us. All right. So that's why Christ said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Right. So we were feeble in spirit, not feeble minded. He says Dr. Hutton and the ESC advocated the elimination of mental deficiencies and of races other than intelligent Anglo-Saxons. Now, let me pull up the piece here about get the one that's from BBC about the story of Africa slavery. I just want one part on this. Okay, I'm only going to read the first two paragraphs. That's all I need on that. So it says the roots of slavery. The term slave has its origins in the word Slav, right? Because I want to make my point here. Trust me, the Slavs were not a big concern for these people, right. All right? Not that they mention, I'm telling you, they're talking about Southern Kingdom and Northern Kingdom in here, right? The term slave has its origins in the word Slav. The Slavs who inhabited a large part of Eastern Europe were taken as slaves by the Muslims of Spain during the 9th century A.D. Slavery can broadly be described as the ownership, buying, and selling of human beings for the purpose of forced and unpaid labor. It is an ancient practice mentioned in both the Bible and the Quran. And so letting you know where the origin comes from, and he's telling you, remember I said the Bible doesn't say slaves, it says captive, right? Or servant a lot of times. But letting you know it's talking about slavery. Now let's get the Slavs. I want the hold on. I want to go to the etymology, the specific one I want. I want to go down to where it starts with, under etymology, it says the English term slave. Yep, there you go. The English term slave derives from the ethnonym Slav. In medieval wars, many Slavs were captured and enslaved, which led to the word Slav becoming synonym to enslaved person. In addition, the English word Slav derives from Middle English word sclave, or esclave is what we say in Spanish, right? Or esclavitud. So it says the word sclave, which was borrowed from medieval Latin sclavis or slavis. Itself a borrowing in Byzantine Greek sklavos, slave, right? Or esclavos. So you see, like, the tongues have a carryover, right? Slave, which was in turn apparently derived from a misunderstanding of the Slavic autonym, denoting a speaker of their own language. All right, that's all I needed on that, to let you know. I'm telling you here that this is a dog whistle. As we read more about eugenics, their targeting was us, right? They're talking about other races. Yes, now did they not like some of their own kind? Of course. They were always warring with each other and doing craziness and things like that.
That's their nature.
That's their nature, but they were talking about us, right? I'm going to go back to the book before I go back to any other links. It says in 1927, the U.S. Supreme Court, that's the U.S. Supreme Court, by the way, the U.S. Supreme Court,
27.
ruled that the state of Virginia, that's why I say Virginia has a history of this stuff, right? Just as recently as 2020, we did an episode where they were speaking about how they were doing this to Issachar recently, that the state of Virginia could sterilize those it thought unfit, particularly when the mother was feeble-minded and promiscuous. 10 years later, U.S. Public Law 136, right? So they framed mischief by law. Right. U.S. Public Law 136 legalized all sterilization in Puerto Rico, even for non-medical reasons. Again, code talk. Because we don't like you, we will sterilize you to try to weaken your womb. We found the people of Puerto Rico poor and distressed, without hope for the future, ignorant, poverty-stricken and diseased, not knowing what constitutes a free and democratic government. Let me get Micah 2 and 1. We're going to read about the eugenics in a little bit. I'm going to bring these scriptures out real quick.
That's crazy.
Micah 2 and 1.
The book of Micah, chapter 2 and verse 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand.
So we understand they're going to have a judgment, right, for the evil that they work. But the part that I want here, it says when the morning is light, they practice it, meaning they do this stuff out in the open, like the sister who called and said it was as recently as 2018.
It's crazy.
They do this stuff out in the open, and nobody really catches on unless you're in the spirit, and it says it's because it's in the power of their hand. They can do it openly again, and nobody's going to have any repercussions against them for doing it, because they've set themselves up in such a position of authority that they can litigate it or write laws to get themselves out of the trouble. Right? Go ahead, read on.
Verse 2, and they covet fields and take them by violence.
Right, we know that's going into them just taking lands and our lands and all that stuff. I mean, at this point, the reason they're able to do this in Puerto Rico at all is because they took the land. Come on.
And houses, and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house.
They oppress a man and his house. Losing your land, losing your heritage is oppression.
Right.
So when people, here's another way that you know we're still in captivity. The world does not acknowledge us as Israelites. We are oppressed.
That's heavy.
Because they've taken our lands, they've taken our heritage. Read the next line.
Even a man and his heritage.
Until we have our heritage back, until they are there keeping, until the Bible governs them, until the Bible is the constitution of the land, until they are there, like you read in Isaiah 66, them bringing their tribute for the new moon, right?
Right.
How they how the gates will be open and they bring their forces in there and their wealth in there.
Right.
Until that happens, we are still oppressed. So you can be on the come up. You can have a measure of wealth in the world. You can have all that stuff. But if you're still running around and the world calls you African American, Puerto Rican, Mexican, Jamaican, Haitian, if you don't get the respect and the identity, right? Because the next thing will be, okay, yeah, we acknowledge you the Israelites. No, we are still oppressed because our heritage was what? What we read in 2nd Ezra.
Right.
The earth was made for us.
Right.
So until we are in rulership, just like Christ said, when we're able to tax, then are the people free.
Right.
And that's what those prophecies are speaking about when it says the gates will be open and they're bringing their forces in. That's what they call taxation.
Tribute.
They're going to have to pay tribute to us.
Right.
Until then, we are oppressed. So nobody could tell me that they're oppressed because, they try to throw Moab in the mix with the oppression. They try to throw Elam in the mix with the oppression. They try to throw Ishmael into the oppression.
The Irish.
They know who they are. They are able to practice their heritage, and nobody says no. Nobody says no, Chinaman. You're not the Chinese people.
And they don't get censored for it.
They don't get censored for it. They don't get canceled for it. You go up and profess to be an Israelite, and you're canceled, you're cut off, you're losing your job, you're losing your family.
Bring it out.
That's oppression. But the point that I want to bring with the eugenics is when it says they oppress a man and his heritage. Where's the scripture where it says, I believe it says, children are heritage? Right? That's something like that. Children are heritage of the Lord.
Oh, yeah. I got you.
Watch this. You know where it is? Or should I look for it?
You should look for it. I know that it's in Psalms.
Oh, stop it. You should be there giving us the damn scripture. How about that? It's
Yeah,
in
right.
Psalms. I just looked it up for my wife the other day, too. Psalms 127 and 3.
Psalms 127, verse 3.
Oh, that was good. That was good. And we're coming back to Micah. Psalms 127, verse 3. Read this.
The book of Psalms, chapter 127 and verse 3. Lo, children are in heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward.
Right, because that's how we continue on through our seed, through our children, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how Christ came about through David and then Solomon, right? On down, and you read through the lineage, right? Via Joseph's seed, right? So children are heritage of the Lord. So now when we go back to Micah 2 and it says even a man in his heritage is oppressed, jump to verse 9.
Verse 9. The women of my people have ye cast out from their pleasant houses.
Right? From their statue, right? From their of being princesses of the Most High. Come on.
From their children have ye taken away my glory forever.
Because they tried with the sterilizations to cut off the heritage of the Israelites. From their children have ye taken away my glory forever. They do it from the children. Sterilizations, and then now you bring it up to today, they do it in your face with things like Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
So letting you know, and see that these scriptures have levels to this thing. Children are our heritage. So it's not just our identity, but they also have dominion and power over our children and how you do that stuff. Listen, it's no secret that when it comes to our women, they love to do C-sections on them. Because I think you can only have 2 or 3 C-sections and then until you can't have any more kids after that.
Yep.
Right? You're not going to be able to have any more children. You're at risk of dying for having more children. Evil as hell. Crafty of how they lay things down. Let me get we're going to come back to the book in a second. Let's talk about the eugenics a little bit. Let me go to let's first go to the one that says eugenics, right? Eugenics. Wiki. Let's go to wiki. Eugenics. Notice on the right it says it's part of a series on discrimination. So by association, eugenics is discrimination. All right?
It's right there, bro.
Yes. So it says eugenics is a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. See, you gotta. I'm telling you, grammar. I know a lot of us were like, "Hey, man, I don't need this." I always loved to read. I grew up in a time where we didn't have phones and screens all over the place.
What?
All I had was the regular
Books.
channels and HBO. I remember when we first got HBO, that was like a huge deal when we got HBO. That was cable, was HBO.
Damn, you had HBO? You was a kid?
Well, when my mom's got with my step pops, then we had HBO. Then we had HBO. There was a time there where we didn't have the HBO.
Bruh.
Right? So he brought the HBO with him. I always remember him for HBO. Anyway, so we had HBO, right? Hey, HBO was amazing back in the day. Like that was home box office.
Bro, I bet.
What?
Bro, I was poor.
What?
I was poor.
Yo, you saw that? You were amped with the HBO.
I had coaxial.
I know millennials don't know what the hell I'm talking about. They don't even know what a record is. What the hell is it? They don't know what a cassette tape is.
They don't even know that Christ is black.
Bruh.
There it is.
Eugenics is a set of beliefs and practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human not the human population,
Right.
a human population. Letting you know they're drawing lines.
Yep.
They're drawing lines. A human population. Historically, by excluding people and groups judged to be inferior and promoting those judged to be superior. The concept predates the term, Plato suggested applying the principles of selective breeding to humans around 400 BC. So it's letting you know it's called eugenics today, but it's been in the earth.
Right.
It's been in the earth,
Right.
right? And I'm going to show you that. Let's get Exodus.
Let's bring it out.
Let's get Exodus. Let's get Exodus 1. I'm going to show you a form of eugenics. And while this wasn't sterilization, this was abortion.
Yep.
This was genocide, right? So let's start with Exodus 1 and 8.
The book of Exodus, chapter 1 and verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
Right, so there was a new kingdom in Egypt that knew not Joseph, because if you know your history, you realize Joseph was great. He was second in command in all of Egypt, all right? And Israel was shown favor for a time under those former dynasties, right? But a new king rose up, a new kingdom, and it says they knew not Joseph, meaning they didn't have not respect unto him and his works that he had done to save the Egyptians. Come on.
And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
See, this is why I say that all this talk that they talk about inferior and all this stuff, they say that to pan to the masses of their people. But the super elite of them, they know deep down that we are more and mightier. They know what we read in 2nd Ezra 6, and that the Most High prefers us and made everything for us. They understand that. And they acknowledge it in private circles, but they won't do it to their masses, right? So he says the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. So it makes them nervous. Come on.
Come on, let us deal wisely with them.
And that wisely has so many facets to that thing. That wisely has so many levels to that. Now we're dealing with medical experimentation and eugenics and stuff like that. But wisely is Christianity, wisely is democracy, wisely is taking some of our own people and setting them as taskmasters over us, right? Which we'll touch on a little bit later, all right? I want to deal with just this part here. So he says, let's deal wisely with them. Come on.
Lest they multiply.
That's how you know they are afraid of our multiplication, because they know that listen, there would be no need for a white supremacist movement if they didn't know that we were better than them.
Right.
Because supremacy means supreme and better. So they have insecurity. White supremacy stems from their insecurity about their inferiority.
Bring it out.
They know we better. They know we more and mightier than them. And they all adopt this mindset, right? And I know the Egyptians were Hamites, but every empire took this mindset and rolled with it.
No, they do know that, because when you read in 2nd Ezra 2, it tells you that the heathen will envy us.
Right.
Because they're not us.
Because they're not us. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So he says, lest they multiply. Come on.
And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
And you have to know the sinisterness in this thought, because we were at peace with Egypt. So why would we rise up and fight with another nation if their intent was not to start to deal evil with us? Right. So they said, hey, we about to turn up the heat on them. And if another country tries to come against us, they can use these more and mightier Israelites from within to rebel against us. They said, so we got to deal wisely with them. Now, I don't want the taskmaster part. Let jump to verse. I don't want serve with rigor. We'll come back to that.
15.
Yeah, start at 15.
Verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him.
Right, so again, eugenics here. They said, listen, we want to keep the women because they understood that your lineage came from the seed of the father. Keep the women. We'll use the women to try to populate. We'll put our seed in their women and weaken their bloodline with our weak-ass seed, right? And weaken their bloodline. And he said, so we're going to selectively kill the sons. And they tried to recruit these two sisters, these two midwives in Egypt at the time. Come on.
But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive.
Them sisters were honorable because they feared the Most High more than they feared Pharaoh. And they knew that meant that could be physical death for them. But they just like it says in the New Testament, it's better to fear the one that can destroy body and soul than somebody that's just gonna be able to kill you off the earth. So they said, hey, I'm gonna worry about the Most High because his judgment, right, is far sorer. Come on.
And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women.
So they dealt wisely with him. They said, hey, the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women. What does that mean? Read on.
For they are lively, and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them.
They said they popping out their own babies. We ain't even got to help them.
Yep.
Unlike the Egyptian women that they all cry baby, they whining. Hey, and my sisters in this world.
Bring
I'm
it
a
up.
man, so I can never understand physically what it's like to carry a child. I can't. But I can look to the scriptures to say pregnancy is not a sickness. Because, bro, sisters get pregnant in this truth. And listen, I'm not trying to be insensitive. Barring some sort of condition that your pregnancy makes it rougher, but I'm talking about you got a regular old pregnancy and the sister becomes like she's ill for the whole 9 months.
Touch on it.
She can't do nothing. She can't be nothing. That like she can't help. A sister that used to help in the body, her body, now I'm pregnant.
She's pregnant, so now her talents. laid up
And
in that
listen, I'm
napkin.
not speaking in extremes, all right, sisters. I'm not speaking in extremes. I understand their circumstances. What I'm trying to do is encourage y'all to see how your foremothers were.
There it is.
All right. The reason Shipra and Puah were able to get away with this was because it was believable. Meaning, it's not that they just dealt deceptively with Pharaoh to try to save them. It was a truth to it. Meaning, it was plausible that they were that strong that they didn't need the midwives, that they could do that thing.
Hey, the things are written aforetime are written for your learning.
That's right.
Right.
Use
right.
these examples.
So
Take 'em.
I would just encourage my sisters to remember that, right? The whole message of fear the Lord and all that stuff like that. And don't fall to the background when, I understand maybe if you're late term and you're almost ready to pop, that's a little different,
A
right?
little different.
But I mean, again, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking sideways because I never dealt with no pregnancy.
It was
right?
always something that could be
Maybe.
done.
I'm just going by what the scripture says. That's all. That's my little public service message right there.
That's
all
what I
right?
heard. I don't know.
That's
That's
my
what I heard.
public
That's what I
service
heard.
message.
Keep giving verse. Keep giving verse.
Come on, read on.
Verse 20. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive.
Right, so that means he started killing the older boys and all that stuff. And you want to know how? Also that Edom picked that practice up? Because when you get to Christ time and the Herodians,
Yep.
he said any child that's 2 and under, right, kill him. He said you got to kill him. So that same vibe was there. That same vibe.
Hey, Cap.
Yeah.
Egypt was doing feeding the kids to the alligators, and then and Esau started doing the same thing.
Yep,
Esau
and
did the
right,
same thing.
with gator bait, right, exactly. And they started doing the same thing. So let's pop back to the eugenics here. So it says Plato suggested applying the principles of selective breeding to humans around 400 BC. Early advocates of eugenics in the 19th century regarded it as a way of improving groups of people. In contemporary usage, the term eugenics is closely associated with scientific racism and white supremacy.
Go figure.
All right. It stands for that, right? It says in the contemporary age, it's talking about now, meaning in modern times. Modern bioethicists who advocate new eugenics, Bill Gates, characterize it as a way of enhancing individual traits regardless of group memberships. Elon Musk is part of that group and stuff as well. While eugenic principles have been practiced as early as ancient Greece, right? We know that just on the scripture, it was practiced from Egypt's time, all right? From before that. But they'll tell you ancient Greece. The contemporary history of eugenics began in the early 20th century when a popular eugenics movement emerged in the United Kingdom and then spread to many countries, including the United States, Canada, and most European countries. In this period, people from across the political spectrum espoused eugenic ideas. Consequently, many countries adopted eugenic policies intended to improve the quality of their population's genetic stock. Trump was doing that when he said, how come we get people from shithole countries when talking about our people? He said, how come we can't get people from Switzerland to emigrate here? He said, we get people from shithole countries.
This dude was literally trying to trade.
The racial draft.
Yeah.
He tried to do the racial draft in this
Bro,
piece.
insane.
Well, ridiculous.
Bruh.
He says, consequently, many countries adopt the eugenic policies intended to improve the quality of their population's genetic stock. Such programs included both positive measures, such as encouraging individuals deemed particularly fit to reproduce, and negative measures, such as marriage prohibitions, so they forbid to marry, and forced sterilization of people deemed unfit for reproduction. This is one of the direct tactics of eugenics. Those deemed unfit to reproduce often included people with mental or physical disabilities based on them saying it.
Yep.
Right? So we'd have been done. They'd have been like, nah, y'all too short. Sterilize them.
I'm close
Bro.
to the ground.
Right. He said people who scored in the low ranges on different IQ tests, criminals and deviants, and members of disfavored minority groups.
Oh, nation not desired.
Oh, nation not desired. The eugenics movement became associated with Nazi Germany and the Holocaust when, in defense of many of the defendants at the Nuremberg trials of 1945 to 46, attempted to justify their human rights abuses by claiming there was little difference between the Nazi eugenics program and the U.S. eugenics program. So the U.S. was there trying to try these guys, and they were like, but
Yeah.
wait a second.
Yeah, right.
They said, wait. Oh, no. But when they do it, it's righteous. But when you do it, we're going to make an example of you. That's why I go say they got no loyalty even amongst themselves. Right? A house divided. It says, in the decades following World War II, with more emphasis on human rights, many countries began to abandon eugenics policies, although some Western countries, the United States, Canada, and Sweden among them, continued to carry out forced sterilizations. Since the 1980s and 1990s, with new assisted reproductive technology procedures available, such as gestational surrogacy, available since 1985, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, available since 1989, and cytoplasmic transfer, first performed in 1996, concern has grown about the possible revival of a more potent form of eugenics after decades of promoting human rights. And again, that's what I'm saying, you're starting to see that sentiment. You're starting to see that now happen again. They don't listen. I was watching. There's on Netflix. It was called "What Happened to Monday." Pretty good. If you watch it with your spiritual eye, and basically it's dystopian future where, because of population, they say the population's too big, it's growing too much. She comes up with the great idea: everybody can have one kid. You can only have one kid, and if you have more than one kid, right? What they'll do is supposedly they'll take the kid, right, and they'll freeze them in cryostasis until, they can pace it to introduce them into the population. I don't want to give it away in case you want to watch it, but it was more sinister than that, what they were doing. And it's real easy to look at this spiritually and what they were really talking about, because it was hypocritical, because like for them, there was exceptions and stuff like that. But for the common folk, which would be us in the spirit, if you watch the movie that way, was us. So
yeah, that's what it
good.
said. It said disfavored ethnic groups, right?
Yeah.
Even this whole thing with population control, that's eugenics right there.
Yep.
Because who's the one that's picking and choosing of who's disfavored and who's not?
Right. The earth stands forever. The earth ain't going nowhere, right? The scripture tells us that. So when they say that they're afraid about too much people in the earth, they're afraid about us in the earth. They want to be all right. They put that vibration on there. The earth can bear it. And guess what? If it can't bear it, you best believe the Most High's coming before that to reduce that population.
That's right.
Yep.
He gonna do his thing. But the earth ain't going nowhere. They saying we gonna destroy the planet and all that stuff like that. No. It's gonna be new life. The scripture says Esau's the end, Jacob's the beginning. right? Meaning you're going to see it's going to be better. It's going to be better than anything that's here now. So it says a criticism of eugenics policies is that regardless of whether negative or positive policies are used, they are susceptible to abuse because the genetic selection criteria are determined by whichever group has political power at the time. Furthermore, many criticize, so it's letting you know that whoever's in power determines the agenda. Furthermore, many criticize negative eugenics in particular as a violation of basic human rights, seen since 1968's Proclamation of Tehran as including the right to reproduce. Another criticism is that eugenics policies eventually led to a loss of genetic diversity, thereby resulting in inbreeding depression due to a loss of genetic variation. Yet another criticism of contemporary eugenics policies is that they propose to permanently and artificially disrupt millions of years of evolution. All right, so they're going into some other stuff. Now, you jump down. Let's look at the eugenics tree. I don't think I needed anything.
That right there, it tells you that basically whoever's in power, right? The scripture says the earth's given into the hands of the wicked, and his agenda is to make us remain those hidden ones, right? That the name of Israel be no more in remembrance.
Right.
So, of course, he's going to use his eugenics and everything else that's targeted towards the black and Hispanics.
So it says eugenics, like a tree, eugenics draws its materials from many sources and organizes them into a harmonious entity. Eugenics is the self-direction of human evolution. God, what they're telling you is that they're trying to box with God. God has his plan, but they want to self-direct it. This is their pomp. This is why they think they could set their nest amongst the stars and all this stuff. With the reason they're so fervent with science is because they want to see themselves more and more as God. They want to be able to try to put themselves in a position that they're the Most High. So it's in their pomp, they think that they can self-direct, meaning overcome the Most High's plan. Jeez. And you'll look here in different branches, different roots that come in. It says anatomy, biology, physiology, genetics, psychology, mental testing.
Politics.
I always don't say this one right. I always get that one wrong. Anthropometry. History, meaning they manipulate history, right? Anthropology, geology. What? You know what geology is? Carbon dating. Where they go and they take rocks and stuff and they tell you, no, it's not that old. Right. It's this, right? Because they take stones, they dig, they say the layers of the sediment say the earth is this old. It's not this, it's not that. Anything to contradict the Bible. Archaeology, that's Indiana Jones, the thief, right? Robbing our relics, the history of those things.
Movies went hard though.
Yes. Ethnology, law, statistics. Look, politics, like the captain brought out. Economics, genealogy, biography, religion. Do you see religion in there?
Yep, right on the right.
That's what I'm saying. The eugenics the dealing wisely has many layers to it. Medicine and surgery, because we're going to talk about the cancer stuff in a minute. Medicine and surgery that they did in Puerto Rico. You'll see all this stuff there in the eugenics tree.
This goes back to what Captain Emporium was saying about when you take all these things as categories, these encompass our everyday lives. So everything they do is designed specifically with us in mind. Every single thing.
That's why that scripture that I think you quoted earlier, where it's talking about they frame mischief by law. All this stuff is put in here because of that.
Right. There's a saying that they have called necessity is the mother of invention. And because they know that they're less than us, they know that they're dropping the bucket, they were driven by the need to invent all these things to try to subdue us. This is that crafty counsel. This is that dealing wisely. Right. And what drove it and drives it today, to go with what you're just saying, how Captain Emporium says it's always about us, right? We're all in agreement with that. Necessity is the mother of invention. If you ever hear that term, you hear them say it and all that stuff like that, that's what drives them. Out of necessity, because they realize that the time of the Gentiles is for a period of time, not forever. Right? There's a fulfillment of that, like you read in Luke 21:24. Until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. We will be in this oppression. We will be under these curses of the law until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. They know that when the Bible speaks about them, there is an expiration date. Right. So out of necessity, they invent all these different things to try to combat us. You got a scripture you want to bring out? I see you can turn the pages there.
Give me 2nd Ezra 13 and verse 38. Because they're coming up with all these crafty things to not stop, because you can't stop what the Most High says is going to happen, but to hinder the mission, right? 2nd Ezra 13, verse 38.
The book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13 and verse 38. And shall lay before them their evil thoughts, and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented.
So this one, the second coming of Christ, when he comes to destroy these nations and then render them a recompense for the evil that they've done to us, read.
Which are like unto a flame.
Read.
And he shall destroy them without labor by the law which is like unto fire.
Us simply keeping the commandments and the faith of
Bring it
Christ
out.
is going to destroy all those things. Everything that we just saw in that eugenics tree, from economics to education to to religion, all cast down by us simply keeping the commandments and the faith of Christ.
Right.
That's the simplicity that we have in Christ Jesus and coming back to our true heritage and keeping these laws.
Right, right. All praises, all praises. Let's go to the next one, eugenics in the United States. So eugenics in the United States, you see a picture there of a bunch of, see they had a eugenics building.
Of a bunch of issues.
All right. That's at the Kansas Free Fair in Topeka, Kansas.
Fitter family.
All right.
Sounds-
The Fitter
Sounds
family.
racist.
Oh, the Fitter Family Contest. So they had a thing with that, the Fitter Family Contest. I had another article I was reading about it, but it had some bones in it, so I didn't want to confuse the people. But that was a thing. That was a thing, right? So eugenics, the set of beliefs and practices which aims at improving the genetic quality of... See, notice how crafty they are? They put the human population. When it comes to the United States being mentioned,
yeah.
they got to put the human population. See, but you ain't fooling me, so not even biblically. I see your wordplay. Your wordplay's strong.
When you're woke, you're woke.
We're reading eugenics in the United States, so they're talking about the human population of the United States. So when they say they're talking about the leaders of the United States.
It all goes back to them.
Rest, it's them. Played a significant role in the history and culture of the United States during the Progressive Era, from the late 19th century until the U.S. involvement in World War II. Notice that it's the Progressive Era, right? Meaning they made progress when they came up with eugenics. While ostensibly about improving genetic quality, it has been argued that eugenics was more about preserving the position of the dominant groups in the population. So they put this info out there, but they word it in such a crafty way. They're saying it's been argued that that's what it's about. No, that's what it's about.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Scholarly research has determined that people who found themselves targets of the eugenics movement were those who were seen as unfit for society. The poor, the disabled, the mentally ill, and specific communities of color. Specific. That's code talk. The Israelite communities of color is what it's talking about. Native indigenous, so-called blacks, right? Hispanics, and a disproportionate number of those who fell victim to eugenicist sterilization initiatives were women who identified as African American, Hispanic, or Native American.
Boom.
A disproportionate number. So meaning the rest was collateral damage.
Wow.
Their intent and their invention was to come at us. Because you'll see things. Yes, there's some white people that got sterilized. Men and women. You'll see things like that. That was to kind of cover up and make it seem like that was what their agenda was. Oh, we got to make it believable, Jim, so that the masses will accept it. There's some amongst us who are weak in spirit and will not see the mission. Well, then let's just sacrifice the crippled ones of our kind, and we'll do it like that. Yeah, that'll do it. And then they went ahead.
Sometimes they just collateral. It's just
That's it.
That's what it is. It literally is just it's just that.
Yeah.
So as a result, the United States Progressive Era eugenics movement is now generally associated with racist and nativist elements, as the movement was to some extent a reaction to demographic and population changes, as well as concerns over the economy and social well-being, rather than scientific genetics. That sounds like today.
That sounds like
Right.
That sounds like what these people that are storming the Capitol and that you see all over the place talking about. They are disgruntled because of the demographic and population changes, and they have concerns over the economy and their social well-being. Go ahead. We got a caller. Hello, caller. You on the air?
Hey, shalom, Captain.
Shalom. Who's that?
You know who that is.
Who that?
It's Soldier Yael.
Hey,
Hey.
Soji Yael. What's
Hey,
going
shalom,
on,
Soji.
brother? Shalom.
Shalom, how y'all doing? I wanted to share something. I'm not sure if you guys were already aware of it, but wanted to ask were you aware of a professor named Eric Pianka out of Texas?
Doesn't sound
I don't know.
familiar.
I don't know. You know, all their Edomite names sound.
Yeah, right.
What is he an Edomite? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
He's an Edomite, and I think he's like a professor from University of Texas, and he used to head up the Academy of Science of the University of Texas.
Okay.
And I think it was, what was it, like mid 2000s? He did a speech, an actual speech, talking about how we need to come out with a virus that's more bolder than AIDS, because AIDS is not killing people off fast enough. And
By people, you
they
mean?
talked about different types of well, yeah, I mean, of course he didn't say people of color or nothing like that, but he tried to make it sound general, talking about there's too many people on the earth, saying the same stuff Bill Gates is saying. And he's saying that the AIDS is killing off people too slow. We need to come out with viruses that kill at a more faster rate. And then after he said it, his audience of students and faculty and so forth stood up and gave this man a standing ovation.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
like,
listen,
wow.
the thing is, they're becoming more blatant with it, and maybe, I don't know if it pulls back a little, but I think you're going to start to see it more and more. And for me, I think it's spiritual. The Most High really wants to reveal that son of perdition, and it's not going to be as covert anymore. You're going to see a lot more of this overt type of stuff that you're talking about being out there. But, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, not one bit. So, you out on the road, brother?
Yes, sir. I'm rolling right now.
Okay, all right. Hey, thanks for the call in. Thanks for that piece of information, adding that to the show. You be safe out there on the road. Lord's will, we'll see you this Sabbath.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate you all, Captain.
All right. Hey, all right. Godspeed, man. Stay safe out there,
Hey,
brother.
shalom, so the Most High in Christ bless you, brother.
Shalom. Most High Christ bless.
Yeah, man. That's how they roll. And they're very careful with their speech, how they write it, how they put it out there. But every now and then they feel emboldened, right? Like Richard Spencer, right? And those platforms. You think they're not doing what they're doing just because they might have removed them from the internet? Don't mean they still not dealing with their circles. If anything, that probably makes them even more dangerous, because now nobody knows what the hell they're saying. So let's scroll down because I still want to read some more pages from the book. We got a few things to read. Eugenics, Sterilization, and the African American Community. Let's read that real quick. This is in the U.S. So it says early proponents of the eugenics movement included not only influential white Americans, but also several proponent African American intellectuals. So this kind of segue into when I bring out how they set people over us of our own kind to kind of buy into that stuff, right? And we'll read that in a little bit, not just yet. So they said, look, they said Webb Du Bois, Thomas Wyatt Turner, and many academics at Tuskegee University, Howard University, and Hampton University. They said they had them buying into the eugenics thing. However, unlike many white eugenicists, these black intellectuals believed the best African Americans were as good as the best white Americans. So this is, again, trying to be in league with the white man. And the talented 10th of all races should mix. So they were saying we should mix. Take the top 10 of their race and our race. Golly. Indeed, Du Bois believed only fit blacks should procreate to eradicate the race's heritage of moral iniquity. Gosh. So I wanted to just read that part because you're going to see how there was some black support for it. And you'll see that, again, and when we break down the taskmaster part, right? Eugenics during the civil rights era. I don't want to get too overly into this stuff. You guys can read this on your own time. Let's read this. Sterilization of African American women. Though it is unknown the exact number of African American women who were sterilized throughout the country in the 20th century, records from a few states offer some estimates. In the state of North Carolina, which was seen as having the most aggressive eugenics program out of the 32 states that had one. So one time 32 states had a eugenics program. During the 45-year reign of the North Carolina Eugenics Board from 1929 to 1974, right, a disproportionate number of those who were targeted for forced or coerced sterilization were black and female, with almost all being poor. Of the 7,600 women who were sterilized by the state between the years 1933 and 1973, about 5,000 were African American. In light of the history, North Carolina became the first state to offer compensation to surviving victims of compulsory sterilization. The hell does money do if you just rob my heritage, like we read in the scripture? Get out of here with that. Additionally, whereas African Americans made up just over 1% of California's population, they accounted for at least 4% of the total number of sterilization operations conducted by the state between 1909 and 1979. Overall, according to one 1989 study, 31.6% of African American women without a high school diploma were sterilized, while only 14.5% of white women of the same educational status were sterilized. So, again, you see those disproportionate numbers, and those numbers now, with Planned Parenthood and putting it in our sisters' minds, to be so cavalier. You have the pill, the morning after pill. You have the different ways that you have abortion available to you. They don't even need to force us no more. We do it ourselves. Sterilization of Latina women. So I'm going to jump to that. Actually, before we get to that one, I just want to point out, let's go to Native American women, because when I jump back to Latina women, it's dealing with Puerto Rico. Scroll down. No, scroll down. It's past the Latina women. Right there. An estimated, and there's a whole, they have their whole own article on that on Wiki. An estimated 40% of Native American women, 60,000 to 70,000 women, and 10% of Native American men in the United States underwent sterilization in the 1970s. In the 1970s. A General Accounting Office reported in 1976 found that 3,406 Native American women, 3,000 of which were of childbearing age, were sterilized by the Indian Health Services in Arizona, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and South Dakota from 1973 to 1976. The GAO reported did not conclude any instances of coerced sterilization, but called for the so you're just gonna go in at those numbers and say sterilize me.
Yeah, right.
But call for the reform of IHS and contract doc. So why, if it wasn't coerced, why would you need to reform the IHS?
Right.
And contract doctors' processes of obtaining informed consent for sterilization procedures. The IHS informed consent process examined by the GAO did not comply with a 1974 ruling of the U.S. District Court that any individual contemplating sterilization should be advised orally at the outset that at no time could federal benefits be withdrawn because of failure to agree to sterilization. So they just gave it away. They basically said, we're going to take away the reservation, we're going to take away your federal funding and all that stuff if you don't. And they coerced them into it. I don't want to read too much more into that. Let's jump back up to Puerto Rico. The 20th century demarcated a time in which compulsory sterilization heavily navigated its way into primary Latinx communities against Latina women. And notice all tribes are represented here with the sterilizations, right? Yep. I don't see Moab in here. I don't see Elam with mass sterilizations. I don't see Amalek. They try to throw Nazi Germany in there, right? You see that there, influence on Nazi Germany, all right, a little bit. But we're dealing here with the U.S. I don't see Ishmael in there. Nope. All right.
I see Esau in there.
All right. The history of eugenics pertains to the Israelites. Locations such as Puerto Rico and Los Angeles, California, were found to have had large amounts of their female population coerced into sterilization procedures without quality and necessary informed consent nor full awareness of the procedure. Puerto Rico, between the span of the 1930s to the 1970s, nearly 1/3 of the female population in Puerto Rico was sterilized. We just read that from the book. Now you're seeing it in another resource here. At the time, this was the highest rate of sterilization in the world. Arguments stand that the implementation of sterilization was in an effort to rectify the country's poverty and unemployment rates. Oh, so we can fix poverty and unemployment by making you not have any more kids. How racist is that? Even so, that sterilization became legal in the eyes of the government in 1937, and that's what we read when they passed Public Law 136 that made it legal. The procedure was so common that it was often referred to solely as La Operación, garnering a documentary referenced by the same name. Hey, that might be a good movie night thing to watch.
You know what's real evil about that, too? Because they were saying that they were taking people that were unfit to be parents, right? Mm-hmm. And let's say maybe someone's not financially the best to be a parent, right? That's because they went into Puerto Rico and then they took away what? It was like...
They made us poor.
Exactly.
They took away everything. We went over that a few weeks back.
They said your dollar is not worth $1 no more.
They took away 40% of the dollar.
Insane.
Right. and then said, "Oh, now we got to sterilize you to control this epidemic of poverty that we created."
Because you're unfit.
Evil as hell.
Unquote.
This intentional targeting of Latinx communities exemplifies the strategic placement of racial eugenics in modern history. His inward thoughts, right? His thoughts, he does a deep search. The heart of him is deep. It was a strategic placement of eugenics, meaning targeted against us. This targeting is also inclusive of those with disability. Of those with disabilities and those from marginalized populations, which Puerto Rico is not the only example of this trend. Eugenics did not serve as the only reason for the disproportionate rates of sterilization in the Puerto Rican community. Contraceptive trials were inducted in the 1950s towards Puerto Rican women. So all these birth control that you have today, they practiced it on the Puerto Rican woman, on the Ephraimite woman.
That's crazy.
Dr. John Rock and Dr. Gregory Pincus were the two men spearheading the human trials of oral contraceptives. In 1954, the decision was made to conduct a clinical experiment in Puerto Rico, citing the island's large network of birth control clinics. This is where they started to realize that, hey, if we put Planned Parenthood in every neighborhood that they're in, I can almost guarantee you there ain't no Planned Parenthood in Scottsdale.
Nope.
They don't have that stuff where the wealthy and where they are. It says, in 1954, a decision was made to conduct a clinical experiment in Puerto Rico, citing the island's large network of birth control clinics and lack of anti-birth control laws, which was in contrast to the United States' thorough cultural and religious opposition to the reproductive service. The decision to conduct the trials in this community was also motivated by the structural implications of supremacy and colonialism. Yeah, let them be our experimentation ground. Rock and Pincus monopolized off of the primarily poor and uneducated background of these women, countering that if they could follow the pill regimen, then women anywhere in the world could too. So he said if these freaking savages could do it, any woman could do it.
Yep.
These women were purposely ill-informed of the oral contraceptive's presence. The researchers only reported that the drug, which was administered at a much higher dosage than what the birth controls prescribed at today, was to prevent pregnancy, not that it was tied to a clinical trial in order to jumpstart oral contraceptive access in America through FDA approval. So they gave the mega doses of this stuff, and that's another method whereby they were sterilized. Last slide here, we're going to go back to the book. Check this out. The Society for Biodemography and Social Biology. I'm just going to show you that eugenics is still alive today. The American Council of the American Eugenics Society is alive today. The Society of Biodemography and Social Biology, which was formerly known as the Society of the Study of Social Biology, and before then as the American Eugenics Society, is dedicated to furthering the discussion, advancement, and dissemination of knowledge about biological and sociocultural forces which affects the structure and composition of human populations. This is the modern day eugenics society, and it's still in existence. It hasn't gone away. So when you read and they say it's not there anymore, just like the soldier when he called in and he said there's this doctor over there that was talking about that stuff
10 years ago.
in a forum 10 years ago, I would not be surprised if he was not associated with this society. So what they do is they change the name of these things. Just like the School of the Americas, it's not called the School of the Americas anymore.
Yep.
They call it something else. And, you go into the history, and it tells you all their presidents from when it was the American Eugenics Society. And it's still alive today. They've just renamed it, right? It even tells you on the right, part of a series on American eugenics. So it's still alive and well today. So let me go back to the book here. Bring this out. Let's go back to page 34. We're going to talk about Dr. Cornelius Rose, this demon. Within this context, Dr. Cornelius Rose arrived in Puerto Rico and made a brilliant career move, right? So meaning within the context of eugenics and forced sterilization of the women, this doctor decided to come in Puerto Rico. Born on, I don't need to read his other thing. Let me jump down. After teaching pathology at Harvard, he eventually joined the newly formed Rockefeller Anemia Commission. It jumps to page 35. Commission set up a research laboratory in San Juan Presbyterian Hospital. Shortly after his arrival in San Juan, on the night of November 10th, 1931, Rhodes got drunk at a party. He emerged to find his car stripped of the tires, flat. That sounds like Ephraim. When he returned to his lab that night in a foul mood and still drunk, he scrawled a note to a friend named Fred Stewart, who was a medical researcher in Boston. So he was drunk and angry, and he let it all out. And he says, I can get a damn fine job here, and I'm tempted to take it. It would be ideal except for the Puerto Ricans. They are beyond doubt the dirtiest, laziest, most degenerate, and thievish race of men ever to inhabit this sphere.
Damn.
They use the same terminology for us.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you sick to inhabit the same island with them. They are even lower than the Italians, right? Because remember, they had a thing with the Italians at one point. What the island needs is not public health work, but a tidal wave or something to totally exterminate the entire population. It might then be livable. I have done my best to further the process of their extermination by killing off 8 and transplanting cancer into several more. All physicians take delight in the abuse and torture of the unfortunate subjects. He says all. Damn. He confessed in this letter that he's killed 8 patients and he transplanted cancer into several more. Puerto Ricans. Ephraim. The letter was discovered and created an uproar through the hospital. An investigation by San Juan District Attorney Jose Ramon Quiñones confirmed that of the 13 recently deceased cancer patients at San Juan Presbyterian, 8 had indeed been in Rhodes' care. So he was not lying. They confirmed that those 8 that were in his care died. La Democracia en el Mundo published a photograph of Rhodes' letter. Copies were sent to the governor of Puerto Rico, the League of Nations, the Pan American Union, the American Civil Liberties Union, newspapers, foreign embassies, and the Vatican. And watching for a nation that cannot save us, huh? Right. They send it all to these people. They're the same people oppressing us, but we're going to cry to them for help. They were offered as evidence of systemic and lethal U.S. racism towards Puerto Ricans. Rhodes called his letter a fantastic and playful composition written entirely for my own diversion.
Damn.
This is what they say. This is what they downplay it after they spew this stuff. His peers laughed along with him. Rhodes was never indicted and suffered no professional consequences for his actions.
Of course not. Of course not.
Check out his career. It says throughout his long career, he supervised a staff of several hundred chemists, technicians, statisticians, librarians, and laboratory assistants. During World War II, he was commissioned as a colonel and assigned as chief of medicine in the Chemical Weapons Division of the U.S. Army. Wow. He established U.S. Army chemical weapons laboratories in Utah, Maryland, and Panama, for which he received the Legion of Merit Award in 1945. After the war, Rhodes served as an advisor to the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, specializing in nuclear medicine. He directed the Sloan Kettering Institute, where he supervised all research related to the Department of Defense radiation experiments. The Department of Defense conducted radiation experiments on Puerto Ricans. I'm going to show it to you. In the early 1950s, his Sloan Kettering team began a multi-year study of post-irradiation syndrome in humans. Many Puerto Ricans, to their astonishment, realized that exterminating 8 Puerto Ricans and transplanting cancer into several more had been an excellent career move for Rhodes in the long run. It positioned him as a talented biological warrior and created a niche for him in U.S. medical and military circles. In 1949, Rhodes was featured on the cover of the June 27 issue of Time magazine.
Jeez. So they gave a murderer more weapons to commit more murder.
Oh yeah. So
Sounds about white.
Yeah.
Sounds about white. We're gonna read a little bit. We're gonna read a little bit more about Rhodes here. Hold on. Jump to page 164. All right. Jump to page 164. I'm trying to get this all in. And I'm starting, right there. So it says, the day came sooner than anyone had expected. In September 1930, Jose went to San Juan Presbyterian for anemia and was given iron injections by a new doctor named Cornelius Rose. Hey, I know that guy. We just read a summary of his career. 2 weeks later, he had trouble swallowing hard food, and by November, he could barely swallow soft food, then liquids, then finally his own saliva. He lost 20 pounds, even though he was a slim man to begin with. See, this is why people be scared to go to the doctor.
Yep.
Right? And listen, you know where I stand on that. Be informed, right? This is why the Most High had to put it in there and remind us, honor the physician. But don't be so blind and trusting when you go. Take command of your care. Ask questions. You know what I'm saying? Right. Be informed. Look things up. Dr. Rhodes gave Jose a new set of injections. So after he got jacked up from the first set of injections, this is the same guy who hated us. But Jose didn't know that. And he lost 20 pounds, and he was already slim. Couldn't barely swallow soft food. Could barely swallow liquids. Could barely swallow his own saliva after seeing this guy, right? And then he goes back to him, and he gives him a new set of injections. And he assured him that his body would adjust to the medication, but it never did. He developed a lump in his throat. And in January 1931, less than a year, because he went to see him in September of 1930, and in January 1931, Rhodes announced that Jose had throat cancer. Remember, he was dealing with irradiation. He was dealing with chemical warfare.
Right. As a colonel.
Right. So he learned all this stuff, and he was implementing it. You saw his missive that he wrote, where his intention was. And this was the guy that they said, yeah, stay there and treat the Puerto Ricans on the island.
Yep.
On advice from Albizu Campos, Jose asked for his medical records, but the hospital refused on the grounds that all medical records were confidential. They didn't even want to give him his own medical records. Albizu was preparing to sue the doctor in the hospital when in late February, Jose started vomiting blood and died in the Solón Boricua bathroom. Hundreds of people, farmers, soldiers, sugarcane workers, prison buddies, barbershop customers, and every person Jose had been feeding for the past 10 years attended the funeral. Hold on. Let me see. I don't want that. Okay, jump down. A few months later, Albizu discovered that the doctor who gave Jose the iron injections had been Rhodes. The same man who had written, so Albizu Campos knew that this was the guy that wrote, the Puerto Ricans are the dirtiest, laziest, most degenerate and thievish race of men ever to inhabit this sphere. I have done my best to further the process of extermination by killing off 8 and transplanting cancer into several more. And this guy died of throat cancer after seeing this guy for 4 months.
That's insane.
All physicians take delight in abuse and torture of the unfortunate subjects. Albizu sent copies of Rhodes' letters to newspapers, embassies, the League of Nations, and even the Vatican. No one did anything about it. And Vidal never forgot how El Aguila had been killed. So the guy was of good report. He used to feed people in the neighborhood. He had a barbershop business. All right. Almost done here with this aspect of the book. We're going to go to Weird Science in Puerto Rico. I'm going to show you some of the stuff with their irradiation experiments. There is a great deal at stake in determining whether the U.S. government irradiated Pedro Albizu Campos. If it did not, then one might conclude that he was insane, which would substantiate the logic of the U.S. government, that no one in his or her right mind would wish for Puerto Rican independence. If, on the other hand, Albizu was irradiated, then the U.S. government acted with scientific savagery, using physics and mathematics for the purpose of assassination, burning defenseless prisoners alive in their cells. A conclusive, irrefutable determination of Albizu's radiation claim is impossible since the U.S. government maintained complete dominion over Albizu's body and controlled all access to it. And FBI reports contain the only written records about that body. So Albizu Campos, we're going to spend some time on him eventually on a future show. He was a revolutionary for the Puerto Rican independence movement. We spoke about him very briefly when we were talking about Lolita Lebron a few weeks back.
Lolita Lebron.
Lolita Lebron.
Lolita.
So he was like an enemy of the state as far as they were concerned. And we're going to read a little bit about J. Edgar Hoover and how he was monitoring him all the time. Despite these limitations, a reasonable analysis is still possible, especially given facts that began to surface in the mid-1980s. In November 1986, Congressman Edward Markey delivered a report to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce titled American Nuclear Guinea Pigs, 3 Decades of Radiation Experiments on U.S. Citizens. Another little-known fact is that on the island of Vieques, which is off the eastern coast of Puerto Rico, the Navy had a base there for many years where they did nuclear experimentation in there, all right, in close proximity. I want to say 3 miles off the mainland. So all that nuclear, they tested nuclear bombs there. They tested nuclear bombs there. So you have these higher incidences of cancer and different things, and there was a multi-affront to the Puerto Rican people based on this, right?
Such a small place for so much evil to be narrowed in on this.
Oh yeah. Right.
I mean, even that
almost makes you think they cursed.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, would you look at that? Would you look at that? That's because they know that Ephraim's the head tribe of the Northern Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They knew that. It covered 695 people exposed to radiation in 31 experiments sponsored by the U.S. Army and the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, some of the 1940s and 1950s. In many instances, the government covered up the nature of the experiments after the subjects died. The victims included 131 prisoners at Oregon and Washington State. Prisoners whose testicles, were irradiated with X-rays.
Wow.
Right? Because they got like penis envy of our people.
Yeah.
So they irradiated their testicles. Like, why the testicles? They irradiated their testicles with X-rays during a 10-year study between 1963 and 1973. The levels reached 600 roentgens per exposure at 2-week intervals, though the safe level of testicular exposure is only 5 roentgens per year.
Wow.
Roentgens per year. But they were doing 600 roentgens
per
exposure every 2 weeks for 10 years. In other medical studies during 1943 and 1944, people underwent total body irradiation with no prior disclosure about the dangers of X-rays. This was only the start. In August 1995, the U.S. Department of Energy dropped a bombshell, announcing that federally supported radiation experiments had used up to 20,000 men, women, and children between World War II and the mid-1970s. And this is what they admit to. And notice how they wait to do this till all the perpetrators are long gone and dead. And so that they can say, well, it was a long time ago. It was a different era. It was different people. It wasn't
It was
us.
their fathers.
Right. It wasn't us is what they'll tell you. I want the one. Remind me to get the one in Job about that, where it says it's in their bones. Some 435 experiments, confirmed experiments, used children, mental patients, mentally disabled people, and prison inmates. In many cases, these individuals were exposed to lethal beams of radiation and then died. In 12 secret Cold War experiments, atomic weapons researchers released thousands of times the radiation that would be considered safe today. Let me jump down. In the worst cases, the experiments were kept secret from the public and the victims themselves in order to avoid liability or embarrassment to the government. In one cynical study, mentally disabled children at the Walter E. Fennell State School in Waltham, Massachusetts, were told they were joining a science club and fed radioactive materials in their cereal for 10 years. So they irradiated their cereal just so that they could experiment and see the effects on them. All this exposure, combined with aggressive journalism, forced the U.S. Department of Energy to pay $4.8 million. So again, they buy their way out of it with the money that they print. Let's jump down. I'm trying to get through certain parts. So the case for Albizu. It is not certain, but it is possible that Albizu campus was one of the 20,000 people subjected to radiation experimentation. It is not certain, but it is possible that Albizu endured TBI for 5 years, total body irradiation. FBI reports, page 241. FBI, you got it? 241? Oh, you're there. Okay, I didn't see it on my thing. Repeatedly mentioned visually apparent physical signs. There is no dispute that he exhibited swollen legs, sores on his legs, arms, and torso, bluish marks on his skin, facial and neck swelling, raw peeling skin on his hands and feet, high blood pressure. Look at this, 220 over 110. And this man was living in the dungeon of prison, because I didn't even go over how the dungeons were in the prison that he was in Puerto Rico. Just for speaking out and trying to fight for independence for his people. And they irradiated the hell out of him. Yo, 220 over 110? These conditions persisted throughout his incarceration from 1951 until his stroke in 1956. They tortured him to death, and he wound up having a stroke, supposedly, is what they say. In addition, Albizu complained of continuous severe headaches that were most intense after the alleged radiation attacks. Check this out. On January 21st, 1954, an FBI radiogram sent directly to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. This is the same J. Edgar Hoover said that the biggest threat to the United States is black unity.
That's right.
And if you look at old pictures of what he saw as black unity, you had Brown Berets, you had the American Indian movement, and Black Panthers all working together. And he saw the possibility, and he understood what was there. J. Edgar Hoover was very against the Israelites, all right? So you have this report, and it says a Cuban doctor, visited Albizu in November 1953, and upon returning to Cuba, has declarations about Albizu's case that he will place before the next International Congress of Doctors. Identity of Cuban doctor unknown. So the FBI was keeping tabs on this guy's health, because what you're going to see here is inklings that they were complicit in this and they knew it. So they were worried about this Cuban doctor basically sounding the alarm that they were doing radiation experiments in prison on this guy. This same radiogram continues. A sample of matter from a blister on subject Albizu's leg was shown or sent to a Mexican doctor who stated that there was no doubt it was caused by some sort of electronic or radioactive emanation. It concludes, New York and Chicago are requested to obtain from informants any information assisting identification of Cuban or Mexican physicians who are alleged contacts of the subject. He means the New York and Chicago FBI field offices, because that's where most of Ephraim was, right? And they were watching, because remember, Lolita LeBron came in and she did that in 1954. The bottom of the radiogram contained an instruction from Hoover. If the intelligence contained in the above message is to be distributed outside the Bureau, it is suggested that it be suitably paraphrased, meaning cover it up. Cover it up and don't let them know. Another FBI radiogram instructed the New York and Chicago offices to furnish any available information regarding identity of the alleged group of experts and furnish plans of any doctors or experts to visit Albizu in Puerto Rico. Thus, rather than attempting to identify the organic causes of Albizu's illness, the U.S. government was conducting clandestine surveillance of any doctors who independently tried to diagnose his condition. This surveillance reached epic proportions with regards to Dr. Nassim Hanoka. I'm not going to go into that. Let me jump to page 243. Just reading little excerpts at this point because we're almost near wrapping up here. In early 1951, another doctor entered the picture. In February and March, Dr. Marshall Brewster, director of the medical division of the Oak Ridge Institute for Nuclear Studies, visited Puerto Rico. He met with several farmers and University of Puerto Rico administrators to create a radioactive fertilizer study on Puerto Rican coffee plantations. So this was beyond just them doing this to sterilizing the women. This was beyond, because even in that, they had direct and indirect, right? They would directly cut their tubes, hysterectomies, and then they would experiment with stuff on them, right? With the cancer, they would experiment when people would come in and be sick. And what they did was they put radioactive fertilizer in the ground in our coffee plantations and who knows what else, so that the population would wind up getting different types of sickness that would occur from radioactive. But it's an evil, evil, evil demon, bro. The declassified FBI records for Albizu Campos omit the period of Dr. Bruce's visit to the island. So it's redacted. So his visit there is redacted, which lends to the suspicions around it, which coincides exactly with Albizu's first reports of radiation in his cell. Orange was the primary U.S. facility for the construction and operation of TBI chambers, total body irradiation. It built the first state-of-the-art medium exposure rate total body irradiator and the first low exposure rate total body irradiation chamber, and used them to irradiate nearly 200 people over almost 15 years. The U.S. Army and National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, both provided extensive funding for Orange to study the effects of single, repeated, and protracted doses of radiation on human subjects, because they say there's a whole bunch of radiation in space. So what they did was, let's see how much radiation these subjects could take so that we know how to shield our things. And mind you, this is before the moon mission. So that we can know how much shielding to put, how much this to put. Because, right, we know that Satan gave him that knowledge.
90 seconds.
But guess how we did that, right? He did that by experimenting on our people. And very specifically, we're talking about Puerto Ricans here. Let's see what else. Let me jump down. In this murk of coincidence, missing FBI documents and TBI chambers, another coincidence developed. In the early 1950s, the Special Weapons Agency of the U.S. Department of Defense awarded the Sloan Kettering Institute in New York, remember we read about that earlier with Dr. Rhodes, a multi-million-dollar contract to study post-irradiation syndrome in humans. From 1945 until 1959, the director of the Sloan Kettering Institute was Dr. Cornelius. There's your man's again.
There he is.
Dr. Cornelius Rose, who was also a consultant of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission.
This brother had a lot of
Rhodes'
titles.
name even appears in the contract documents for this post-radiation syndrome study. As discussed earlier in this book, Albizu had hounded Rhodes out of Puerto Rico after Rhodes wrote an infamous letter about killing 8 Puerto Ricans and transplanting cancer into several more.
Times Man of the Year.
This guy was all over the place dealing with this stuff. So they have a history of creating things and experimenting with us and throwing it on our people and doing all that stuff.
10 seconds.
Listen, I'm exhausted about speaking about COVID, but I saw 2 articles recently where they said I think 60 to 70,000 so-called Hispanics have been killed by COVID. 50,000 so-called African Americans. Disproportionate numbers, and this is the numbers that they're reporting with this stuff. Remember, we've spoken about that these things are targeted to hit us more. They'll even tell you in their own thing that it's disproportionately affecting Native Americans, Hispanics, and so-called blacks. It's coming at us. So they use us as their testing ground, as their field. Did I have any more pages? Because I didn't have anything bookmarked. I don't know if I had more pages that we didn't cover of the book. I know I didn't have any more web pages. Because there's one more scripture I wanted to go over. I want to show you something with the taskmasters. And there was something that I highlighted that was going to prompt me. There was nothing else? No more pages?
You didn't write anything down, Cap? This time?
Nah, man. Towards the
That
end,
was
I
it.
still
This
didn't
one
realize.
and this one and this one. Page 244 and
Let me
245.
see if there was something in that and I just didn't highlight it. Hold on. So you said 244, 245. So it was the end of that chapter. Hold on.
It's on the way. Cornelius Rhodes, Times Man of the Year. That dude was all over
You
the
know what?
island.
Let's go to
Insane.
244.
Right.
Let's jump. I want to read this one part here. So in 1994, Albuquerque Tribune reporter Eileen Welsom won the Pulitzer Prize for national reporting for her 3-part expose on the government-sponsored radiation experiments from 1944 to 1974. She later published a book titled The Plutonium Files, in which she concluded the following. The U.S. federal government conducted hundreds of secret radiation experiments on its own people, because Puerto Ricans are American citizens. Thousands of Americans were used as laboratory animals in these radiation experiments funded by the federal government. The radiation experiments revealed a deliberate intent, a willingness to inflict harm. The TBI, total body irradiation procedures, caused intense suffering and premature death. A web of deception and denial enabled the experiments to continue for decades. So they're telling you that he largely was, they're talking about him specifically, and they basically out of spite, they targeted him to be included in this overarching experiments that they were running with this.
Sounds like Trump.
And I wanted to bring out this one piece. Let me show you this in Exodus. I want to deal with the taskmaster piece because I want to show you something. A lot of times we don't go to the other precept that's in Exodus 5 after we read Exodus 1. So let's get Exodus 1 and put verse 11. All right, I want to read this. I can't remember the prompt. There was something I had there, and I might have missed it, where it said that some of our people were involved in that stuff. But we did read with eugenics, some of our people getting down with that stuff or whatever. So check this out. This was another way that they dealt wisely with us.
The book of Exodus, chapter 1 and verse 11. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses.
Right, so they set over them taskmasters. But what it doesn't tell you here when it says they dealt wisely with them is that the taskmasters were of their own people. And a lot of times they'll do it of high-ranking people. Let's get Exodus 5 and 14.
Exodus 5 and verse 14. And the officers of the children of Israel.
The officers, meaning the chief of our people, right? So that's why we were reading about Webb Dubois and the other names that were there, right? They try to persuade them to be involved in these things. So it says, and the officers of the children of Israel, come on.
Which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them.
Right? So Pharaoh's, the Egyptian taskmasters, set officers of Israel as taskmasters over the Israelites. Read on.
Were beaten and demanded Wherefore have ye not fulfilled your task in making brick, both yesterday and today, as heretofore?
Right, letting you know they were the supervisors of their own people to make sure that there was productivity of the Israelites. Come on.
Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, Wherefore dealest thou thus with thy servants?
Right, so letting you know that they were in league with him. They were in league with him. A lot of these things would not have been able to happen if you didn't have sellouts amongst our people to roll with that sort of thing.
Same thing today.
Betrayers of that stuff. You see that today. You see that today, not realizing the repercussions and what they're supporting. And a lot of times it's trivial. They'll play on little emotional things and stuff like that, you know, and I find that relevant and important to bring out because you're starting to see all types of stuff, right? What are you showing me, Ashaya?
The blessing of Ephraim and how he would be shot at, he hated. But
Oh
then the
yeah,
Lord restrained him.
Let's bring that out. Let's get Genesis 49 and 22, right? Just so you can see why Ephraim went through all these atrocities. All right.
Genesis chapter 49 and verse 22. Joseph is a fruitful bow.
Right. So the stick of Joseph is in the hand of Ephraim. Come on. So he says it's a fruitful bow. Come on.
Even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall.
Right. So letting you know that the even though they did all this type of stuff to us, we would have a lot of children. We would be very fruitful when it comes to that. Right. When it says his branches run over the wall, it goes into two parts. Right. Nowadays, you probably have more Puerto Ricans outside of Puerto Rico than in, right? There's mass exoduses leaving out of there. But more specifically, dealing with how in Hosea we were giving the women were giving themselves to the oppressor, right? So the branches run over the wall as far as sleeping with the enemy, basically. Come on.
Verse 23, the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him.
Archers, this is why they did it. They grieved us. They hated us. The stuff we read today, the atrocities that were done to our people, all right, to the tribe of Ephraim, is because they sorely grieved her. This ain't even, I mean, there's so much more that went on in here, right? And they hated him. Come on.
But his bow abode in strength.
We still here.
That's right.
We still here. Come on.
And the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God.
Remember,
of
they
Jacob.
said we were feeble. But we read in Hebrews, I said, lift up the hands that hang down and the feeble knees, because the mighty God of Jacob strengthened them hands. And that's why we still here. Come on.
From thence is the shepherd and stone of Israel.
The sons of Nun are back.
That's right.
That's right.
That's how we rolling. That's how we rolling.
Hey,
Y'all
Cap,
got any final thoughts? Go ahead, producer.
did he still want Job chapter 20?
20 and 11.
Oh, I did make reference to that. Sure, you brought it out. Let's get it out. Is it 20 and 11 that talks about that? Let's bring that out real quick. Because we're making the comment that they'll wait years and years to release something, and then say release it and be like, oh, well, that was a long time ago, right? That wasn't us. Come on.
The book of Job, chapter 20, and verse, you want to start at 10?
Nah, read 11. We'll get to the point.
Verse 11. His bones are full of the sin in his youth.
Right, so his bones, Edom's bones are full of the sins of his youth. Right, listen, this is real heavy. When you think about the bones, it means that it's in their bloodline. It's in their genetics to be this way. So when they say it wasn't them, it damn well was them. Right. It carries on in their genes. Come on.
Which shall lie down with him in the dust.
Them same bones that go to the dust, all right? So it's letting you know that it's in him. So when they tell you it wasn't them or whatever, get the hell out of here with that.
The hell
ridiculous.
out of here with that.
Yeah, man. Come on. Yep. Anyway, so that's the show.
Give
You
us some
good?
applause,
You good?
round
You
of
complete?
applause. Oh, that was a
complete?
beautiful class.
All praises. You complete?
I concur with the
audience.
yes.
Producer, you complete? You want to say anything?
Praise is good. All praise.
All praises to the Most High. I pray y'all got some understanding. I saw a comment much earlier in the show where someone was saying they're frustrated when they bring to our people and they can't see it. Hey, sometimes you got to give them some of this stuff to go along with them scriptures, and maybe that'll knock some sense into them, right? Slap them with the book, boom, you know, and see what's going on. So, Lord's will you share these resources, all right? And pass it along. Like, share, subscribe to the show. We're also on Facebook at the Lost 144K. You can like the page there. We have the Saturday morning show, 11 a.m. Arizona time. That one's an hour. And Lord's will will be on next week. All right, 7 p.m. Arizona time, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
And I pray you continue support, like, and share. Thank you for the call-ins. All right, we definitely enjoy that. So don't be shy. If you've become a regular listener as we've been doing this show, jump on with us. Jump on with us. Make some comments and stuff like that. I think it adds to the show, so it's nice to hear. So we appreciate those callers who did call in, all right? So with that, we say shalom.
Shalom.
Israel is back. We back. Israel is back. We got back. The nations running scared because Israel is back. All eyes on us because we keeping them laws. When the Lord return, Babylon will fall. Precepts solid. We got them on lock. God's chosen people with Christ as our rock. Israel is back. We back. Israel is back. We back. You heathen, get ready for our whip to crack.